What is good, Josh on the School Game Man? Back with yet another reaction video, baby. Today we're back with some more anime content. My boy Naruto is back in town. And today we have all Jinchuriki ranked and explained. The last one we did this was all tail beasts. Now we got the actual Jinchuriki, so people holding the tail beast. So I can't say which one of these would you rather be. Last time we did which tail beast would you rather have. That'd be no down in the comment section if you guys want to enter that in the beginning here today. In case you missed the last one, let me know which tail beast you would want to have if you are a Naruto fan. And if you know about the tail beast. But before we even go jump into it, leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new to the family, man, and turn on the bell so that way you guys can know when new videos are going live with those notifications. Man, it helps grow the channel out. It pushes out to more people too, the more that you guys do those things. So thank you guys so much for all the shares, likes, and just watching the video in general, which you guys already do for your boys. So let's get into more of this anime content. We'll keep bringing more of these as long as you guys want to see them. And remember, if you guys want more gaming content or more smooth content, head over to Smooth Guy Game for all your gaming needs. You ready? I'm ready. Let's get it.
Within the confines of Naruto, there's a lot of powerful groups that one can fall into. Jonin, Anbu, Kage. However, there is one group that rises above the rest. And that group is the Jinchuriki. Widely regarded as the demons of their villages and treated with as much contempt as you could give somebody, a Jinchuriki is most likely the most powerful person residing within a village, but also usually the most hated. And that dichotomy would be a lot more dangerous in the real world. Imagine we gave the nuclear codes to one dude and then we told everybody to hate that dude. But who are all the Jinchuriki? What are their powers? Who's the most powerful? Who wasn't hated? Who was hated? We're gonna get to all those questions and more, but first, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And while you guys are typing away on that keyboard, please, guys, for me, go to my other two YouTube pages, NC Gamer 23, where instead of talking anime, I play video games, and Hammer's Collection, where instead of talking about anime while sitting, I talk about anime while I build massive anime statues. So, Jinchuriki. What happens when you combine a human and a tailed beast? Arguably the strongest power-up you can receive within the confines of the Naruto universe, and yet, for some reason, they are despised by everybody in their respective villages. Well, at least most of them are, because there is exceptions to that rule. But today we're not here to explain what a Jinchuriki is. Today we're here to explain each and every individual Jinchuriki there's ever been and where they fall in the grand power scheme of strongest to weakest ever Jinchuriki. Now, unfortunately for a lot of Jinchurikis, what we got to see was either filler or we never got to see anything at all from them. But my personal stance on filler is that if it gives us information that we didn't already have, then, well, we might as well use it. Unless that information contradicts something else that we learned down the line. And unfortunately, our first Jinchuriki kind of falls into the category of somebody we don't know a whole lot about. That's for a multitude of reasons. One, he was technically the first ever Jinchuriki, not including Hagoromo. And two, upon having his tail beast sealed inside of him, well, he was sealed inside of a tea kettle for the rest of his life. My Naruto scholars in the comments will know that I'm talking about Banpuku. You see, Banpuku was an elderly priest from the Hidden Sands. And since the Hidden Sand captured Shukaku before Hashirama captured the other 8-tailed beast, Banpuku was actually the first Jinchuriki. However, unfortunately for Banpuku, he was also the first person to experience the hatred directed towards Jinchuriki. And unfortunately, Banpuku never really had much of a chance at a regular life. Shukaku was caught by the first Kazekage and then immediately sealed into Banpuku as he was born. However, since he was the first Jinchuriki and people didn't really understand how Jinchurikis work, people in the Hidden Sand thought Banpuku was actually just Shukaku, and therefore he was jailed from his earliest days. But he was jailed with Shukaku. Essentially, both Banpuku and Shukaku were sealed inside of a kettle. A kettle covered with a bunch of seal tags and a bunch of other chakra applied to it. But here's the thing, within the confines of this kettle, Banpuku and Shukaku lived in harmony. You know how Naruto has Kurama locked inside of a cage? Well, that is a physical representation of the seal that Naruto has on Kurama. Banpuku had nothing of that sort. And in fact, Banpuku and Shukaku often had conversations with each other, in which Shukaku actually told Banpuku that he reminded him of Hagoromo, the Sage of Six Paths, because Banpuku didn't resent the people who shunned him into this tea kettle in the first place. In fact, on his hands, as he was a monk, he had inscribed in kanji, accept and heart. Except in order to remind himself to accept a situation, because if Shukaku is separated from him, he will die. And heart to remind him to forgive those who misunderstand his situation. This mental fortitude is actually what allowed Banpuku to be such a good Jinchuriki for Shukaku. It's widely assumed that Banpuku had access to a massive amount of chakra because he was a Jinchuriki of Shukaku and was able to use sand manipulation techniques. However, what's most important to regard when it comes to Banpuku as a Jinchuriki is the fact that Shukaku never mentally degraded him. Banpuku was able to live with Shukaku almost almost his entire life, from infancy to elderly. On top of that, we know that Banpuku was incredibly talented in Fuin Jutsu, or sealing jutsu, because he was able to seal Shukaku within a tea kettle. And this was by using the technique that he created, the Dharma power sealing technique, Sen no Rikyu. Essentially, this technique shoots a chakra chain into the Tenketsu point in the navel of a Jinchuriki. Well, at least that's how it's used in the anime as we see. This chain then wraps around the neck of the tailed beast within this Jinchuriki and pulls the tailed beast out. Because this chain messes with the tailed beast chakra network, it immobilizes them, which makes the Jinchuriki unable to use their chakra in this situation. However, it's largely believed that Banpuku used this ability to wrap the chain around Shukaku's neck while he was free and pull him into the tea kettle. But where Banpuku's true legacy comes in is the departing words he gave to Shukaku, when he told Shukaku that one day he would have a Jinchuriki who would bring him into the light through understanding, essentially foreshadowing Gaara's existence. But since Banpuku never fully mastered the techniques of Shukaku and was never really allowed to fight, considering he was a monk and also a master of Fuin Jutsu, well, he's the lowest member on our list. And since we're talking about people who never mastered their tailed beasts, well, the next person on our list is Rin. But almost everything.
Dang, should she not even be lower than Momoku? You know, at least Momoku got old. We gotta think, as a grown man, he can at least take on a kid.
The thing we know about Banpuku is mostly guesswork, provided to us through a filler arc. We have actual scalable feats for Rin. And mind you, Banpuku had almost 70 years with Shukaku and never mastered his techniques, and the fact that Rin never figured it out, well, really can't be held against her, considering she had Isobu for what, like 2 days? Truly, what we understand about Rin is even when she was sent to destroy the Kanami Bridge and she was abducted by Iwa forces, after they put her in Genjutsu, her will was so strong that she didn't tell them anything about Konoha's war efforts, implying that there's a possibility that she has a small amount of genjutsu resistance, which requires insane chakra control. And then when Obito was crushed by our world's most famous rock, she was able to transplant his surviving eye into Kakashi using medical ninjutsu, which, even though the Uchiha make it look like a simple procedure, it is just anything but that. After the destruction of Kanami Bridge, though, Rin was secretly abducted by Madara under the guise of it being the Hidden Mist. She then had Isobu forcibly sealed inside of her, and she was sent back to Konoha, being chased by Anbu and Jonin from the Hidden Mist. It's at this point that she committed suicide by jumping in front of Kakashi Chidori. She did this in order to protect Konoha, implying that even though she was a genin who had survived the Third Great Shinobi World War for a pretty long amount of time, and that's saying something because that was the bloodiest conflict in Naruto's history before the fourth one, she also had an incredible amount of will and courage. As for Jinchuriki abilities, well, she had none. She had Isobu for legitimately 2 days. But if she had survived, there's no reason to believe she wouldn't have been a powerful Jinchuriki. How about we get to some people who actually had Jinchuriki abilities, though far from perfected. Our next entry on the list is Blue Bee, Killer Bee's predecessor. You see, Blue Bee was a hidden cloud Jonin. His uncle was the third Raikage, and his cousin was the fourth Raikage. So he came from a very powerful line. But even with all that power, he wasn't able to subjugate Gyuki to his will. You see, of all the tailed beasts, Gyuki is probably the hardest to have inside of you. I hate how I said that. But here's the thing, this problem wasn't unique to Blue Bee.
Hey, look, we all make the mistakes sometimes. Sometimes they just slip out.
Because he couldn't subjugate Gyuki to his will, neither could the fourth Raikage or Blue Bee's father. But here's the thing, just because Blue Bee couldn't fully subjugate Gyuki to his will doesn't mean that he couldn't use Gyuki's abilities to some degree. In the manga, we actually don't see Blue Bee use these abilities at all. The fourth Raikage simply says he was a skilled ninja who was great at ninjutsu. However, we did get to see him fight while he was still alive in the anime. But the majority of the power that we saw out of Blue Bee was after he got reincarnated, which by itself is a mark of his power, considering the fact that Kabuto considered him worthy to be reincarnated. And on top of talent in ninjutsu and kenjutsu, because he carried a sword and he was from the hidden cloud, so we kind of have to just assume, he was also a sensor type ninja, being able to sense Gyuki's chakra within Killer Bee when Killer Bee wasn't accessing Gyuki's chakra at the moment. And upon his reincarnation, he was able to access a level 2 Jinchuriki cloak, which allowed him to fight Killer Bee to a standstill while they were both in version 2. And that's saying something. He was able to cancel out Killer Bee's lightning style lariat with his own. And this is by using only a part of Gyuki that was resealed into him after he was brought back with Edo Tensei. Because technically in the anime only filler arc that showed us more of him fighting, it was actually Orochimaru disguised as a doctor who was getting him to rage out of control. And because Orochimaru was in the hidden cloud disguised as a doctor using his genjutsu inducing pills, he was able to get a piece of Gyuki that was later sealed into him when he was reincarnated. Don't love that part of the filler, because it kind of negates everything that we learned about Blue Bee not being able to contain Gyuki because Gyuki's hard to contain. And instead it shifts the blame onto Orochimaru. Regardless, version 2 state equal to Killer Bee's with only a partial fraction of Gyuki's power. and in his lifetime, he was able to manifest a singular tail of Gyuki in order to increase his power in combat. But since we're talking about people who are only able to partially manifest their tailed beast, the next person on our list is Fu. Fu was a Jinchuriki from the Hidden Waterfall, which is a village we will cover at some point. One of the reasons I want to talk about the Hidden Waterfall is because Fu was actually the exception to the I hate all Jinchurikis rule. The leader of the Hidden Waterfall, Shibuki, actually made it so everybody was incredibly nice to Fu. And Shibuki actually played a large role in getting her train depth to be as powerful as she became. Fu was the Jinchuriki of Chome, the Seven Tails, and she was actually able to use a lot of abilities tied into Chome. Fu was able to use a technique called Hiding in Scale Powder Technique, which essentially had her breathing out sparkling substance that glittered so brightly it would blind her opponents, giving her openings to attack, because surprise attacks were actually her specialty. This is largely because she was able to manifest Chome's wings on her lower back and fly, giving her a massive increase in speed over your average ninja. In the anime, she was also able to use a transmission technique that allowed her to communicate with her allies just using her brain, which is essentially the Yamanaka's ability, so it is not easy to come by. She was also able to create webs that would heal her allies just by them coming into contact with it. But obviously, as somebody who can make webs, you could also use these webs to ensnare opponents. She could even make cocoons that would slow down chakra absorption techniques. Jinchurobo's ability to put you in earth release and then slowly suck away all your chakra out of you, she can slow those techniques down by putting herself in a cocoon. And on top of the fact that she can grow wings on her lower back and therefore fly, she can also enter version 2. So the fact that she has control over Chome when Blue Bee didn't have control over Gyuki puts her over Blue Bee. Since we're talking about Blue Bee, let's talk about the Hidden Cloud's other Jinchuriki, Yugito Ni. Yugito became a Jinchuriki of Matatabi, the two tails, at the age of, well, 2. And because the Hidden Cloud was kind of sick of their Jinchurikis freaking out and losing control of their tailed beast, they put Yugito through a grotesque training regimen to make her control Matatabi. And by the end of this training regimen, she could, making her our first Jinchuriki on this list who's able to at will transform into their tailed beast. And as a Koinaichi, she was so powerful that Killer Bee, who was technically older than her, looked up to her. See, Yugito was able to use Fire Release, albeit in a gross way, because Fire Release is a specialty of Matatabi. Essentially, Yugito could shoot Fire Release hairballs. And these hairballs would essentially be a mouse made of hair covered in flame. These hairballs could then split into individual threads of fire that would chase down her opponents and explode upon contact. And when she was done being gross like that, she could be gross in another way, by Wolverining her nails into giant claws. She could do this with both her fingernails and her toenails, which I'm not going to show you my toenails, which when combined with her taijutsu prowess made her deadly at close combat. And when Yugito turned into Matatabi, she was able to breathe fire, being able to shoot fireballs so massive out of her mouth that it could destroy an entire building in one go. But just because Yugito had the ability to transform into the two tails at will didn't mean that she had the full control over Matatabi, and therefore she couldn't do things like tailed beast bombs. Utakata was from the Hidden Mist, and he was the tailed beast of the Six Tails, Saiken. However, Utakata left the Hidden Mist village during the Bloody Mist era, like so many other powerful ninja. But because the circumstances that made Utakata leave the Hidden Mist village were kind of hazy to even himself, essentially his master saw the burden that being a Jinchuriki was putting on Utakata, and therefore his master tried to pull Saiken out of him to fix Utakata's life. However, this ritual went wrong and it actually turned Utakata into Saiken like a Jinchuriki transformation, which ended up killing his master. Disillusioned and confused after this transformation, Utakata then left the Hidden Mist village. But when you leave the Hidden Mist village, you get Hunter Nin sent after you, a special grouping of the Anbu specific to the Hidden Mist village, built in order to track down people who leave the Hidden Mist village. So as Utakata tried to live his life as a wanderer, he constantly had to fight off enemies like the Hunter Nin. This was relatively easy for him because he was a very talented ninja. He was able to sense Naruto's unusual chakra and even sense when people were molding chakra for ninjutsu. On top of this, he was relatively tapped into senjutsu. While not being a sage himself, he was able to track nature energy. He was able to do this with his soap bubble ninjutsu. But what was his soap bubble ninjutsu? Well, it was pretty much his entire shtick, so we should probably get into it. Essentially, Utakata was able to use water release in combination with his bubble-blowing relic in order to create, well, bubbles. And these bubbles can be vastly different. He can blow bubbles at somebody that will explode upon contact. Or Utakata, a lot like Dater, can simply just explode these bubbles whenever he wants, because these bubbles are inherently made of his chakra and therefore he has control over them. On top of this, Utakata can actually combine Saiken's abilities into these bubbles, being able to combine things like Saiken's acid to make acid bubbles, or Saiken's ink to create ink-filled bubbles, both of which either immobilize or kill instantly upon contact. But these bubbles can be used other ways than offensive. Utakata can also use a thing called bubble release drift, where he puts himself or somebody else, or the combination of the two things in a bubble, which allows him to escape a situation and conceal himself, because the bubble works as a defensive barrier that actually conceals his chakra signature. And these bubbles are actually strong enough to stand up to things like explosive tags. As far as Jinchuriki transformations go, Utakata actually couldn't fully transform into Psychic, but he was able to access and control a full six-tailed version 2 cloak. And with the use of this cloak, he was actually able to absorb the entirety of a Fury release, which is a Kekkei Genkai so powerful that it can destroy entire villages like that. If you're curious about that Kekkei Genkai, I've made an entire video about it. But that's not even the most impressive thing he's done. While in this form, he was able to destroy 2 of Nagato's Paths of Pain, as well as one of his summonings, and to pressure the Deva Path, which is Nagato's most powerful path. But I know what you're saying. You're saying
Utakata wasn't able to fully manifest Saiken, so shouldn't Yugito be above him?
Well, the feats that we see with Utakata just using the version 2 cloak are much better than what we see from Yugito. So for that, I'm putting him above her. But the next entry on our list is undoubtedly stronger than both of them, because the next entry on our list is Han.
And I would say I agree with that too, just really quick, as a quick point. She lost to the Immortal brothers, Kakuzu and Hidan. He lost to 6 Pains with Renegons, and I even beat 2 of them. So I was, he definitely a little bit more stronger, even without. Now imagine if he had fully transformed into something, that probably would have been real bad.
Besides being above 7 foot tall, Han was an incredibly strong shinobi. Han was a hidden stone shinobi in the Jinchuriki of the Five Tails Kukyo. Han is the first entry on this list to have inherited the Kekkei Genkai from their own tailed beast. Obviously, Shukaku has magnet release, but Banpuku never got it. As far as we know, we can maybe assume he was able to manipulate sand, but we've never seen it. We for sure saw Han use boil release though. You see, boil release is the combination of, you're not gonna believe this, fire and water release. And Han was known worldwide for his steam ninjutsu abilities. But here's the thing about Han's steam ninjutsu. It works 2 separate ways. Essentially, Han covered his entire body in a specialty armor, with a furnace on his back that he uses to store steam. He could release this steam to burn you, but the way that he usually used this steam was to boil his own chakra. Essentially, by increasing the temperature of his chakra to an almost boiling point, he was able to increase his speed and physical prowess. This is essentially a Stone Age way of what Naruto did with Baryon mode. You see, by Naruto ramming Kurama and his chakra together, he created a new type of energy, which he used to increase the temperature of his own chakra, which is why he was able to move significantly faster. This is also why 8 Gates gives you such a large increase in speed and strength, because by pumping all of your chakra to your heart, you increase your BPM to such a rate that your blood actually begins to boil, and this is where the red aura comes from. Han can do this at will and without killing himself, obviously to a much lessened effect, but not really by that much, because outside of being known worldwide for his steam ninjutsu, what he was also known worldwide for, according to the 4th data book, was having the fastest taijutsu in the world. Yeah, that's right. Faster than Guy, faster than Rock Lee, faster than Kakashi. Hell, faster than the Raikage. His taijutsu, with the assistance of his steam ninjutsu, was the fastest in the world. Not to mention, once again, he's 7 feet tall. This is why he was able to keep up with Naruto in his Jin Cloak and Killer Bee. Not to mention, he could also fully transform into Kukyo. However, he kind of just used this full Jinchuriki transformation to ram into other Jinchuriki. However, with this ramming power, he was able to severely wound Gyuki and send them flying back pretty far. So all things considered, strong. After Han, we have the person that everybody mixes up with Han, Roshi. Most likely because Roshi was also from the
Thank goodness he said that, because I ain't gonna lie, sometimes I really do be mixing them 2 up sometimes.
Hidden Stone and also used a fire-based Kekkei Genkai. You see, Roshi was the Jinchuriki of the Five Tails, Son Goku. And Son Goku has the Kekkei Genkai of Lava Release. You see, Roshi became the Jinchuriki of Son Goku at a very young age. And he was the Jinchuriki of Son Goku for almost 40 years, implying that his connection with Son Goku, who's one of the nicer tailed beasts, was as good as anybody's. Roshi was an incredibly powerful Jinchuriki, so much so that he actually made Kisame fight seriously, which may not sound like much, but is absolutely much, considering the fact that it took Might Guy 7 gates to kill Kisame without his sword. Roshi's true power came from the Kekkei Genkai of Lava Release, the combination of earth and fire. And with this Lava Release, he could spew molten rock from his mouth, kind of like a fireball, but it sticks to you. But way more importantly than that, Roshi was able to make a set of lava armor for himself. And here's the thing about lava armor. As long as it doesn't burn you, it is quite literally the perfect combination of defense and offense. Since you are now covered in lava that's not burning you, anyone who comes into contact with you, i.e. throws a punch into you, will be burned. And therefore you can assume if you were to throw a punch back at said person, once again, they will be burned. And this lava armor set is so powerful, it was able to burn Naruto in his Jin Cloak mode. Now, the full extent of his control over Son Goku isn't necessarily known. We know that in his fight against Kisame, he was able able to manifest one tail of Son Goku. And in the War arc, Toby forcibly makes him go under the transformation into Son Goku. So considering the fact that he was able to be forcibly put into a Jinchuriki transformation leads me to believe that he was able to do it in his life. And in this mode, obviously, he still has access to things like lava release and tail beast bombs, but also in this mode, he had so much strength, he was able to pick up Gyuki and throw him a very far distance. And once again, I know what you're saying. You're saying,
well, Nick, the guy before this guy was quite literally the fastest person in taijutsu on Earth. How is Roshi stronger than him?
lava release is just stronger than boiler release. It's just the truth. And if we assume that both of them can undertake full Jinchuriki transformations, well, then that point is moot. But if that placement made you angry, well, the next one's also probably not going to help very much. You see, for this placement, I'm actually doing a shared spot. Because while these two people aren't the same person, they're very similar. And we can basically assume all similarities between the two of them. The next two people up on our list are Mito and Kushina. Now, why do Mito and Kushina share a spot? Well, combat prowess-wise, we know next to nothing about Mito. She was a full-blooded Uzumaki who lived all the way to the era of the third Hokage. That was after marrying the first one, mind you. And as a full-blooded Uzumaki, we have to assume that she had an outrageous amount of chakra and was very talented in Fuin Jutsu. Because any Uzumaki who wasn't talented in things like adamantite chains or the Reaper Death Seal wouldn't have been chosen to have Kurama sealed inside of them. And we know that her life force was next level because she had Kurama extracted from her and still lived for like 20 years. Unfortunately, everything we know about Mito is also basically everything we know about Kushina, except we do actually have some scalable feats for Kushina. Kushina, just like Mito, was a full-blooded Uzumaki and therefore had a massive amount of chakra. However, for Kushina, we do know that she was a fully trained Jonin. But even though she was a fully trained Jonin, just like Mito, she focused more on being a housewife than anything. However, just because she was focusing on being a housewife doesn't mean she wasn't powerful. The night Naruto was born, and therefore the night Kurama was pulled out of her, she was able to contain Kurama, the strongest tailed beast, by a far margin, by herself. And mind you, she was able to do this after having Kurama pulled out of her. Jinchuriki, upon having their tail beast pulled out of them, die immediately. Kushina was still running around helping Minato with the fight, and still had enough chakra to stop, well, at least most of Kurama, not enough though. But these are all things that we could assume for Mito. Mito almost definitely was able to use the
Kushina and Minato are never beating the fingernail allegation. So you ain't never gonna hear a video of Naruto mentioning them two and Kurama and not hear something about them just being a little too
adamantite chains, and those adamantite chains were probably strong enough to seal Kurama. We also know that neither of them were able to undergo anything in terms of a Jinchuriki transformation. Well, we don't know that, but we never saw anything. We've also never seen either of them use a jutsu based off Kurama's chakra. But based on just literally being full-blooded Uzumakis capable of sealing tailed beasts by themselves, that puts them above everybody else on this list. You know who it doesn't put them above, though? The kind of person who would make Itachi have to fight very seriously. And that could be no other person but Yagura. Yagura was the fourth Mizukage. He was unfortunately being controlled by Obito with a genjutsu that nobody could identify for the majority of his life, which made him trump up all the worst parts of himself, eventually creating the Blood Mist Village. You see, as a child, Yagura was put through the barbaric ninja academy of the Hidden Mist, where he was forced to kill his fellow students in order to become the strongest shinobi possible. And since he didn't die in this academy, he was considered one of the strongest people in the village. This was even further expressed when he became the Jinchuriki of Isobu after Rin's death. You see, when a Jinchuriki dies with a tailed beast inside of them, the tailed beast chakra then reincarnates somewhere else. Isobu was then later caught by the Hidden Mist and sealed inside of Yagura. And as he trained to be able to fully control Isobu, he became known as the third person ever to be able to fully control a tailed beast. Now, this could be due into the fact that Isobu was one of the more docile tailed beasts, or due into the fact that Yagura is a very powerful person. You see, as a Hokage, Yagura actually unified the majority of the islands of water. And before Obito actually put him in a genjutsu, he was a very good Mizukage. A little on the violent side, but significantly better than he became. Which is why one day, when two members of the Akatsuki infiltrated the land of water, Yagura actually went with the Hunter Nin who were sent to attack them. While all of the Hunter Nin were eventually killed by both Itachi and Jugo, Itachi's original partner, Yagura turned into his version 2 state of Isobu and killed Jugo, who was actually one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist and had the Executioner blade at the moment, so that's saying something. He then actually pushed Itachi into a corner and made Itachi flee. Itachi had to use Amaterasu on Yagura to immobilize him so he could escape. It was then after this failed infiltration that Obito went to the land of water and put Yagura under a genjutsu, which made Yagura manifest all of the worst parts of himself and create the true Blood Mist Village. You see, this is a common misconception. People believe that Itachi was actually the person who killed Yagura. It's actually not the case. You see, as Yagura read a tyrannical reign over the Hidden Mist, people began to rebel against him, most notably Zabuza. And it wasn't until Ao actually acquired a Byakugan from a Hyuga clans member during the Third Great Shinobi World's War that they realized he was under Genjutsu. And upon being broken out of this Genjutsu, Yagura fell into a depression so severe that it actually killed him. And then Isobu was caught down the line by the Akatsuki. You see, Yagura's abilities were no joke. Once again, he killed a member of the Akatsuki and almost killed Itachi. And this was mostly because Yagura was able to use his weird kind of hook club thing to increase his water release techniques. You see, Yagura was able to create water release mirrors that could reflect all ninjutsu, a bit like Itachi Susanoo's Yata Mirror. However, unlike Itachi's Yata Mirror, these water mirrors actually reflect the attack back at the user. Not to mention, in the anime at least, he was very talented with wind release. And that is not to mention that Yagura, unlike anybody else on this list, had full control over his tailed beast, meaning that he could not only enter version 2 and use tailed beast balls on his opponents, he could also fully transform into Isobu. And he had so much control over this version 2 cloak, he was actually able to survive Amaterasu, though it did leave him gravely injured. On top of that, while in version 2, he was able to use an ability called Coral Palm. Coral Palm allowed him to grow coral wherever he wanted, essentially, and if used on an opponent, it could immobilize them or even kill them. However, when he's fully transformed into Isobu, he's able to use Isobu's true strength, turning into a ball and rolling at people at high speeds. Essentially, the Akamichi's entire gambit, but on a much, much larger scale. But since we're talking about people who are able to control their tail beast completely, next up on our list is somebody who it took a bit of time to figure that out, but eventually did. Gaara. I feel as though I probably don't need to explain a lot of Gaara's story to you, but I will anyways. One day, the daimyo who controls the Land of Wind decided to cut the budget for the land hidden in the sand, which is not great for the land hidden in the sand because the only export they have is ninja work. So wanting to make sure that the hidden sand would have ninja work forever, Rasa, the third Kazekage, decided to make one of his children the perfect weapon, aka a Jinchuriki for Shukaku. The only problem is his first two children, Tamari and Kankuro, were not compatible with Shukaku, and that didn't sit well with Rasa, so he decided to seal Shukaku into Gaara while he was still in his mother's stomach. However, having a tail beast inside of her that technically wasn't inside of her, it was in the thing that was inside of her, Karua, Gaara's mother, died from complications. And Gaara was born significantly premature. However, Karua, looking upon this tiny little Gaara, pledged to keep him safe forever. Therefore, her soul entered the sand and protected Gaara as his absolute defense forever. Gaara does not control his absolute defense. That is literally his mother. Is it weird, and does it imply that souls have a physical manifestation ability within the confines of Naruto? Yes, but it's the truth. Gaara was then raised in isolation because he couldn't fully control Shukaku. Because Shukaku, remember, likes to mentally degrade anybody he's put inside him. On top of that, since he was a Jinchuriki and everybody knew he was a Jinchuriki, most of the village was afraid of him. And those who weren't afraid of him, like Gaara's mother's brother, well, eventually ended up dead. And this is because Rasa wanted to create the perfect weapon. But Rasa realized with time that Gaara wouldn't be able to control Shukaku. So he tried to kill him multiple times. And with the last attempt that he tried to kill him with, he sent Karua's brother, Yashimaru. However, Yashimaru was the only person on Earth who was nice to Gaara. So when Gaara accidentally kills Yashimaru, well, kind of sends Gaara down a downward spiral. And it's at this point that Gaara turned into Shukaku and attacked Suna. Suna is the village hidden in the sand. However, this was stopped by Rasa as he used his gold dust to weigh down Shukaku. Obviously, then later on, Gaara goes to the tuning exams, meets Naruto, and falls in love. And after having Shukaku rage out of him in his fight against Naruto, he then begins to work on a relationship between Shukaku and himself. And eventually, with a lot of work, he becomes the fourth ever person to fully control a tailed beast. Or maybe fifth? I don't know. Han might have beaten him to it. Regardless, let's talk about why he's so high on this list. He has his absolute defense, which, mind you, costs him absolutely 0 chakra. Essentially, Gaara carries around a gourd of sand with him. But this gourd of sand isn't just his mother's absolute defense. Essentially, Gaara can control sand, and sand alone, which means in places where there isn't sand, like mountains or forests, he has to make his own sand, which he can do by sending the sand he has in his gourd down into this area and grinding down rocks to create sand. But usually it's best to have sand on you because not all places are sand. And that's why he carries sand. Not because that's the only sand imbued with his mother. His mother basically just follows him like a ghost. And any sand around him is then imbued with her spirit and used for protection. So right off the rip, Gaara has an ability that allows him to be protected from basically all abilities unless they are literally high hypersonic speeds. Then there's obviously the fact that because he has Shukaku inside of him, he can control sand. And even as a genin, he was able to cover an entire field in sand and do a massive sand burial on all of it. And without Kimimaru's second version of the curse mark and the fact that he had Shimkatsu Nyaku, this would have killed him. Gaara was able to defeat Rock Lee, who opened up to, I believe, the 5th gate in a fight, protected the entirety of Suna from a bomb from Datara, went on to become the 5th Kazekage, where he became the leader of the allied shinobi forces, and where he defeated not only his father in combat, but multiple other Kage-level threats, who, mind you, were Edo Tensei, so they had infinite chakra and infinite regeneration. But even before all of that, he had insane levels of chakra. And here's the thing, they may not be tied into Shukaku. You see, using sand as Gaara uses is incredibly chakra depleted. And for a long time, we could say, well, yeah, he can tap into the chakra of Shukaku in order to make sure he can control as much sand for as long as he wants. But he lost Shukaku in Shippuden, and we've never seen a downtick in how much sand he can control. Being able to pull off things like Grand Sand Mausoleum that's so powerful it can bind Otsutsukis for a couple of hours. On top of that, he knows Earth Lightning and Wind Release, and his taijutsu is actually on par with Naruto's. You see, for a long time, Gaara realized that he had weaknesses in taijutsu. He had been pushed to the edge by people like Rock Lee, and therefore wanted to up his taijutsu prowess. So in the anime, he trains with Shira, you know, the 7 heavenly breaths guy, to get his taijutsu to a level that is comparable to Naruto's. We know this because Gaara fights Kinshiki, and when Gaara and Kinshiki are fighting using taijutsu, Kinshiki states that Gaara's taijutsu is equal to Naruto's. On top of this, we learned in Gaara Hiden that Gaara has inherited the magnet release. See, Gaara can control sand because Shukaku could control sand. And then after Shukaku was pulled out of Gaara, Shukaku had so much goodwill for Gaara that he was still able to control sand. But Gaara's magnet release actually allows him to increase the density of chakra within said sand. And he inherited that from Rasa. However, he doesn't like to use this well because he hates Rasa. Not to mention that Gaara's absolute defense sand shield is so powerful that by the time he's an adult, he can shrug off attacks that Sasuke Susanoo can't. And in the same vein, by the time that Gaara is an adult, he can also fully undertake Shukaku's tailed beast transformation. Hell, right now you could argue that Gaara is stronger than Naruto. I mean, I wouldn't, but you could. But since we're talking about Naruto, let's talk about his dad. Minato. Yes, Minato is a Jinchuriki, even though it's incredibly stupid. Minato, upon casting Reaper Death's seal on Kurama.
Interesting. Y'all let me know down below. Would y'all count Minato on the list? He has half of them. So, I mean, by technicality, he has a tail beast and he's Jinchuriki. But would y'all really count that as half, though? And since he technically only had them in, like, the world of drunken stupid,
Kurama was able to pull half of Kurama into the Shinigami stomach with himself. For some reason, Minato decided to take the good half of Kurama and leave the bad half with his infant son. And because he took the good half of Kurama, over the 16 or so years he was in the Shinigami stomach, he was able to become friends with it. And since they became friends and their fight ceased in the Shinigami stomach, their chakra melded, which for some reason had Minato coming back as a perfect Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. And I mean perfect. Like, just as good as Naruto. On top of that, it was also revealed that he was a perfect sage. And he knows Flying Raijin, which allows him to teleport anywhere on Earth instantaneously. Well, at least anywhere he's put a mark. Oh, and mind you, these marks never disappear. Unless you're a Jinchuriki, in which case you can actually get rid of the mark. Which is why Minato isn't able to teleport to Obito just instantly. What else do I need to tell you about Minato? He literally was able to defeat 1,000 shinobi from the Hidden Stone by himself. He was the youngest ever Hokage when he was elected as the 4th Hokage. He was able to use his Flying Raijin to create a net to redirect a tailed beast bomb from Kurama away from the village. He was the creator of the Rasengan and able to learn the 8 trigram seal from Kushina that he used to seal Kurama within Naruto. So even though he's a dumb entry on this list, he's a perfect Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, a perfect sage, and the creator of the Rasengan and can use Flying Raijin. I'm gonna go ahead and say that puts him above roughly everybody else on this list. But what we don't know about Minato is if he could undergo a Jinchuriki transformation. That is, if he could create Kurama. We know he can undergo the Jin Cloak transformation, but we never see him manifest as Kurama. Ooh, I made a mistake in my notes app. I accidentally put Killer Bee over Minato. 2 ways to play this, Nick. Either we find a way to explain that Killer Bee is stronger than Minato, or we acknowledge our mistake. There's an argument for it. I don't know if it's a hill I'm willing to die on, though. So let's just forget I said Minato right there and put Killer Bee under that, which is a perfect.
All right, then. Real quick question for y'all down below. Who do y'all think is stronger, Killer Bee or Minato? I mean, if we're going off the things that they can do, I mean, at least Killer Bee could go into and fully transform into the 8 tails. I mean, they did fight to an almost absolute standstill, but I mean, he was fighting both Killer Bee and he didn't even have Kurama at that time. Yeah, I think I would probably side on that side too. That Minato might be stronger than Killer Bee.
Perfect segue to our next entry on this list, Killer B. I mean, if you look at it like just from a Jinchuriki perspective, like technically Killer B is a better Jinchuriki than Minato. Because like we don't know if other tailed beasts could get a Jin cloak. Like could Gyuki give Killer B a Jin cloak? And technically Killer B could turn into Gyuki fully. Something Minato couldn't. This is a dumb argument. We all know that Killer B isn't as strong as Minato. Killer B is a shinobi from the Hidden Cloud. And while not technically related to the Raikage family, he was adopted by them. The thing about the Hidden Cloud is that the Raikage family technically need a tag team member. In order to pull off a perfect lightning style lariat, you need somebody of equal strength to lariat the other side to decapitate somebody. It's dark, but it's also badass. So when the third Raikage had a son, A, the third Raikage needed to find a partner for A in order to pull off their lariats. So the third Raikage gathered a bunch of young children. Like what's weird is that A was like in his like mid-teens and Killer B was just like maybe like 8 or 9. But regardless of all of the children gathered, Killer B was the only person able to pull off a lightning style lariat. And just like that, A and B became brothers. However, after A and B became brothers, Blue B lost control of Gyuki for the final time, and this caused Blue B to lose his life. You see, Blue B had been chosen as the Jinchuriki of Gyuki because he was related to the Raikage family. But now because B was also technically part of the Raikage family, he was chosen to be the Jinchuriki of Gyuki, and Gyuki was sealed into it. And just like with Blue B, Killer B received similar prejudices for being a Jinchuriki. However, Killer B didn't let it get to him, as he just wanted to simply be the greatest rapper alive. However, just because Killer B was able to deal with the criticisms and the hate that the Hidden Cloud threw at him doesn't mean that he was able to control Gyuki. In fact, he struggled to control Gyuki. That was until him and his brother found an island in the Land of Lightning that had the Waterfall of Truth. And it was at this Waterfall of Truth that Killer B had to fight himself. And because of this revolutionary experience, he was able to fully control Gyuki in a very short amount of time. And after gaining control of Gyuki, the Third Great Shinobi World War popped off, in which Minato's squad actually came up against A and B's squad. But here's the thing, at this moment, it was just A and B. What do I mean by that? B wasn't Killer B yet. B was just B. However, after fighting Minato to a standstill, Minato stated that B had all the makings of a shinobi killer, and thus gave him the nickname Killer, which B adopted to the front of his name to create Killer B. When the third Raikage died during the Third Great Shinobi World War and the fourth Raikage became A, Killer B's adoptive brother, that A, not the third Raikage, A, said that Killer B would never be able to turn into Gyuki and had to stay within the confines of the Hidden Cloud in order to become the Hidden Cloud's ultimate protector. But enough about Killer B's backstory. We're gonna do a you know nothing about him eventually. Let's talk about his abilities. Basically, the first thing we ever see out of Killer B is him killing Sasuke twice. But he wasn't just completely outclassing Sasuke in that fight, he was also outclassing the entirety of Taka, which was filled with 3 low Kage level members at the time, and then went on to fight 2 tailed beasts simultaneously during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. But because Killer B has complete control over his transformation into Gyuki, he gets a couple of added abilities. Like he can't be put under Genjutsu because Gyuki will disrupt his chakra in order to break him out of it. And at any point, he can tap into Gyuki's almost limitless pool of chakra. Killer B can also control version 1 and version 2 all the way up to 8 Tails modes and completely transform into Gyuki himself, where he can fire tailed beast bombs that are so powerful it shoved the tailed beast bomb from the 10 tails back into its own mouth. He can also create giant tornadoes by swinging his tentacles. But if he loses one of these tentacles, they just grow back. On top of this, Killer B has an ability much like Boo's. He can transform parts of his body into that of Gyuki, being able to give himself tentacle arms. Not to mention that his chakra is so powerful, it made Samehada leave Kisame. Oh, and did I mention he's probably the best sword user in the entirety of Naruto? Oh, I didn't? That's weird. Killer B uses an 8-sword style, where he wields 8 vibrato swords. With this 8-sword style, he can attack so efficiently and quick that it outclassed a Sharingan. Not to mention his reflexes are so fast, he reacted to flying Raijin. When Minato teleported behind him, by the way, that happens instantaneously, there is no lag, he was able to get a sword behind him to Minato's gut. On top of that, Killer B is able to use lightning, fire, water, and yang releases. He can even add lightning release to his vibrato swords to cut through things. Most notably, the Executioner Blade. What else can I say about him? He's one of my favorite characters in the entirety of the show. But unfortunately for him, he's not a Jinchuriki of the 10 Tails, like our next entry on the list. Obito. Okay. You see, I pontificated whether or not we should include Obito and Madara in this list, but I decided might as well. Obito wasn't a Jinchuriki for long, like literally like 12 hours, maybe. But while he was a Jinchuriki, he was the Jinchuriki of the 10 Tails, which is literally all the tailed beasts put together. But what did he get when he became the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails? Well, all of the damage done to his body healed immediately. He became massively stronger, faster, and basically impervious to damage whatsoever. But here's the thing about becoming the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. The Ten Tails basically has no will or cognitive thought. It was the force that quite literally terraformed the earth. It separated the seas and it raised the mountains. But it did that because it is simply a malignant force of no cognitive thought. However, when it goes into somebody, you can direct that strength that is able to terraform an entire planet in a direction. And that's what Obito got. With this Ten Tails transformation, he's also able to use Keke Mora, which are chakra releases that combined all 5 chakra natures, and yin and yang. The only people who can use these techniques are descendants of Kaguya and Ten-Tailed Jinchurikis. These techniques include things like Ash All-Killing Bone, True Seeker Orbs, and the Sword of Nunabuko. True Seeker Orbs are impervious to all damage whatsoever from anything that's not Sage Jutsu. They can also create shields, or spears, or domes. It can be controlled by your mind at will, giving you basically an infinitely powerful telekinetic weapon. Ash All-Killing Bone is literally just a projectile that melts anybody it touches, and the Sword of Nunabuko is a sword used by Hagoromo that is stated to be what created the Earth. It is also stated to be able to destroy the Earth just as easily as it created it. On top of this, he had a Rinnegan, which he received from Madara. And while he technically couldn't use his Kamui ability while being the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, that doesn't really matter. Because as a Ten-Tailed Jinchuriki and a holder of wood release because he had Hashirama's cells, he could create trees that could shoot tailed beast bombs. Not to mention, he can create the God Tree, which can cast infinite Tsukiyomi and put the entire planet under Genjutsu. Oh, did I mention that if True Seeker Orbs happen to, I don't know, rip your arm off, it also takes your soul with them? I didn't? Yep. That's weird. But since Obito has the Rinnegan, he was able to summon the demonic statue of the Outer Path, which is actually just the husk of the Ten Tails that he took into himself. He can use all of the Paths of Pain's abilities. And you know, he can fly now. But here's the thing, Obito isn't even the strongest Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. He's not even the second strongest Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, because that would be Madara. Madara's got basically all the other abilities that Obito had, except for some reason he can use Kamui while being the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, and he had 2 Rinnegan, which not only gave him access to all of the abilities of Nagato, but also a little thing called Limbo Clones, which is an invisible, extra-dimensional clone that can interact with the dimension of the caster, meaning that you can't see the clone because they exist in another dimension, but they can see you. And not only can they see you, they can stab you. Madara can make 4 of these clones, and all 4 of these clones can have Susanos, which means that Madara can fight you with one of his own Susanos. It's one of the biggest Susanos ever seen, but also there can be 4 other Susanos that you can't see that can fight you as well. But since we're talking about Susanoo, let's talk about Susanoo. It's one of the things Obito didn't have. Because Obito never awoke a dual MS while he had enough chakra to manifest the Susanoo, he never had one. But Madara's Susanoo was so powerful, it quite literally cut a mountain in half. But even as Jinchurikis of the Ten Tails, neither of them stand up to our main character of the show, Naruto. Obviously, yes, the thing that Naruto is a Jinchuriki of is technically weaker than the Ten Tails, but not by a whole lot. You see, the Nine Tails is said to be stronger than all the other tailed beasts combined, implying that the Nine Tails would therefore then take up about at least 50% of the Ten Tails' strength. And technically, the Ten Tails that Naruto fought during the Fourth Great Shinobi World War didn't even have all of Kurama. It just had the Gold and Silver Brothers who were tossed in there, and they could only use a version 2 state. Where do we even start with Naruto? God. He technically has reactivity speeds of faster than light because he has dodged literal lasers which have been stated to move at light speed. He has small planet durability because he was able to tank a shot from Toneri that literally split the moon in half. His mastery of Jin Cloak before he got Sage of Six Paths chakra made him as fast as the 4th Raikage using his lightning cloak, making him effectively the fastest human on Earth because the fastest human on Earth after Minato's death was the 4th Raikage. He was able to share his chakra with the entirety of the allied shinobi forces. Jinchuriki pulled chakra out of him for 6 hours straight and didn't even get half of it. He unlocked a new mode with Kurama called Baryon mode where they collided their chakra together to make a new form of energy that allowed him to beat the strongest Otsutsuki ever descended to the planet. His punches during Baryon mode, because he is technically destroying chakra and all things are connected through chakra, halves your life every time you're punched with it. 10 years left? Got 5 years left. Not to mention, after the conclusion of the 4th Great Shinobi World War, he got a Hashirama Cell arm, which means he should technically have Hashirama's healing factor and access to wood release. And because he was technically the host of every single tailed beast at one point, he has lava release, boiler release, and magnet release. And his magnet release Rasengan is so powerful it was able to bind Madara, and his lava release Rasen Shuriken quite literally cut the God Tree in half. He's the main character. He's gonna be the strongest person on this list. Well, he would be. Not for the real last entry on our list. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the true strongest Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails.
Let it be known down below, are y'all taking Hagoromo or Naruto? Give me Naruto every time. I gotta roll with you, man. Look, like, just so y'all know, he over there pissed. Talking about some Hagoromo stronger than him.
Ever. Hagoromo. This point is slightly contentious because the majority of Hagoromo's true strength awoke after his death, and at that point, he was no longer the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki. In his lifetime, Naruto is probably stronger than Hagoromo ever was while he was living. That's not what we're talking about. Upon Hagoromo's death, he essentially became God. He became a living physical entity that watched over the entirety of Earth. He was, after all, the reason that the Earth had chakra, since his entire life mission after capturing Kaguya was to spread Ninshu to the entire world. For those of you who haven't seen my chakra explained video, Ninshu is essentially one part of a two-part chakra mixture. In order to create chakra, you have to combine your spiritual energy with your physical energy. Ninshu is your spiritual energy. Hagoromo traveled the entire Earth teaching everybody how to tap into Ninshu. However, people then quickly found out how to add physical power to it, created chakra, and then molded chakra into ninjutsu. Let's also talk about the fact that while he was living, Hagoromo had access to creation of all things jutsu, which is just God. You're God. Essentially, if you have enough chakra, you can create anything, which is why Hagoromo was able to take the chakra of the Ten-Tails, which he had brought into himself after the sealing of Kaguya, and create the Nine-Tailed Beasts. But he created the Nine-Tailed Beasts just from his imagination. Essentially, it's a bit like Izanagi. That's actually not technically correct. Izanagi is a bit like creation of all things. Essentially, Hagoromo can think of something with his imagination and then use chakra to give it actual shape and form. But here's the thing about dead Hagoromo. Besides the fact that he can go to any location and summon anybody to a plane of existence where he exists to talk to him, like he did with Naruto and Sasuke, he also still has chakra. And limitless chakra, mind you. Because now that Hagoromo is dead, he siphons all of his chakra from the Pure Lands, which is canonical Naruto heaven and is an infinite energy source. So when we're like,
Oh, Hagoromo gave the majority of his chakra to Naruto.
no, all of the chakra he gave to Naruto, he immediately got back. So now we are talking about an entity with infinite energy and the ability to make anything. You know, God. And that's it. All Jinchuriki and Naruto ranked and explained. Did you like this list? Did you agree with it? If you did, guys,
Like I said, I think a lot of those points are there. A lot of those points are agreeable. Would I reorganize some things? Maybe. For the most part, though, I do agree with it. I wasn't kind of feeling that Hagoromo thing at the end, but I mean, I guess we are looking at his life after the fact that he now has unlimited chakra, and is basically the ghost that oversees the land. Yeah, I gotta agree with that. But let me know down below if you guys would switch up the list in any other way, shape, or form. Was anybody left off that you guys can think about? Anybody that you think that was put on here that should have been left off? Let me know down in the comment section. I agree with adding in anybody that's ever had a tail beast technically put into their body. They should be on the list. Now their feats on how strong they should be, a little bit more questionable there. But I think we could all agree with Minato. He's been showed off very, very good strength with the Gen 2 version. You can only imagine what would have happened if he had still been alive with half of him, because that would have been crazy to just have two Karamas just roaming around. That actually would have made the show so confusing, just have two Karamas just at all times. But let me know what you guys think of the video down below. Of course, check out the original video. Link to the description will be down below as well. And leave it a like, subscribe, and turn on that bell so you know when videos are going live. As you guys exit the video, I'll catch you guys in the next one. It's me, your boy, Sean, this will be Black Avatar King Leo. Catch you guys in the next video, man. It's time for me to go lay it down. I'm in bed, not the other way. Peace.